Hello everybody, my name is Chris. I'm a landscape architect, and today we're going to be designing a front yard together, and I'm going to talk about my design process along the way. This will be a quick tutorial on landscape design and planting design. The example project that we will be using today may be similar in size and shape to the project that you're working on, in which case feel free to use this as a template for your own design. We'll be using a program called SketchUp. I like using SketchUp because I can design in 3D and I can present my design in 3D to another person once the design is done. You can use SketchUp for free on the internet, although we'll be using the paid version of SketchUp called SketchUp Pro. The yard that we'll be designing today is a pretty straightforward shape and size. It's very square. We got some easy 90-degree angles to be working with. I like this yard as an example because it might match what you have with your own project. All right, so the first thing you need to do to start your design is you need to measure your space, and you need to be mindful of all the things that will remain in and around your space so that you can design with them or around them. Specifically, utility lines, the house itself, the driveway, neighboring features, any trees that will remain. If you don't know where your utility lines are, what you can do if you're in California is you can dial 811 and a service will come out and flag where your utility lines are in the ground for free. This is really important to do before you dig. It may also be helpful to know where those things are in the ground before you start designing and not just when you start doing the construction. Irrigation lines are a little easier to deal with. You may not know where they are in the ground at the time of design or at the time of construction, but they're a lot easier to repair or move or fix. Or if you're using plants that are native to your region, you may just end up abandoning your irrigation system all along because those plants should be adapted to the rainfall that you're receiving in an average year. Jumping forward a little bit here, I've added some patterns to the ground in my SketchUp program to describe what I like to do as a designer, and that is I like to border my space with rock. That's going to hold your mulch into your space without having that mulch flow across the adjacent concrete paths that you want to keep clean. You'll want to be using mulch at the end of your project for the majority of your space because wood chips, aka mulch, are going to retain a lot of moisture in your ground so that your plants can stay happy and watered. It's also going to regulate temperature of your ground. In case you're in an area that gets really hot, you don't want that hot sun beating down on the ground and drying it out. Mulch is going to be your weed barrier, so you don't have to add plastic to the ground. As long as you apply the mulch in a thick enough layer, usually 3 to 4 inches of mulch is what does the trick to keep the weeds from growing. You could do straight lines on your edge of your rock border if you choose to go with a rock border. In this case, I went with a wavy edge and I mirrored it across the driveway for a more symmetrical look. I think this wavy edge provides a more natural appearance. If you went with straight lines for your rock border, your finished product is going to look more modern rather than natural. When doing planting design, I like to think of 3 different zones. Those 3 zones would be based on the height of the plant. Layer 1 are your shortest plants, and they would occur closest to where you'll be walking or where you'll be experiencing. You don't want to be walking next to something that's really tall and overbearing. Layer 2 is your kind of filler stuff. Usually this is between knee height and waist height plants. These plants could be really spready, really wide spreading. You're going to have a lot of variance in heights too to provide some interest. The exception would be a really tall tree planted in this zone 2. We're going to ignore the height on that because you need to put it in the middle of your space so that it's not close to your house and it's not close to your walkway. Zone 3 plants are going to be your tallest plants. This is usually going to be your background, screening, vegetation, windbreaks, visual screens, your accent trees. Zone 3 plants usually occur in the farthest back portion of your project. Usually that's up against the house or along property lines, or if you're on acreage that's way in the back. Another way to think about this is that you're going to have your biggest things in the back and your smallest things in the front. If you start in the back with something small, just be mindful that you should probably be going smaller than that as you come forward and towards where people are going to be walking. Sometimes you don't have enough room for a filler zone 2. That's why, as you see on the left side, zone 1 and zone 3 are right up against each other because there's not enough room for a middle filler zone 2. What we're going to do for planting design here is going to be the pretty tried and true center focal point tree with an accent tree over by the property line, kind of as a corner anchor. Now, this project that we're using as an example is located in Sacramento, California, and the plants that we'll be using may not be available to you or may not grow very well in your region. You probably already have an idea of some of the plants you want to be using in your design, which is good. It's also a good idea to go visit a plant nursery just to see what other options there are available to you. And then once you have a bunch of different variety of textures, colors, shapes, and sizes picked out, set them aside either as a list that you've made or just keep them in your mind as options. And that's going to become our plant palette that we use for the project. So some of the plants that have been selected for this project are like California fuchsia, penstemons, verbena, coyote mint. This plant here could be representational of a low-growing sage. We have some grasses in there just to provide some vertical texture. There's plants that we'll be using that are kind of gray, silverish, dark green, light green. Just a variety of things is going to provide some interest. The tree that we've picked out for the front main tree will be a Desert Museum Palo Verde. They have a cool yellow flower in the spring and this kind of interesting green bark. The tree that's going to anchor the corner might be a redbud, it might be a crepe myrtle, it might be a Japanese maple. Those are some options that we had as part of our plant palette. Once we have our trees in there, we can start adding our plants up against the house. Another word for a plant against a house is a foundation plant. The plants that will go against the house next to the windows will have to be lower than the window. I personally really like using sunset manzanita as a plant for foundations because you can maintain it to be about 3 to 4 feet high and that it only comes up to the bottom of the window. It's also really slow growing, which means that you don't have to maintain it as much to keep it at the height that you want it to be at. We also talked about sages, so I'm going to use this plant as representative of a sage. Sages can get pretty tall. Maybe this is like a Cleveland sage or a white sage. I want it to be a little bit taller between the windows up against the house so that it fills up that wall space. Also, I know that this is a south-facing wall, which means that it's going to reflect a lot of heat onto my plants that I plant at the base of this wall. And sages in particular really like reflected heat. And now just to mirror what we've done on the left side, I'm going to copy my sunset manzanita over to the right side so that it's underneath that window as well. And it's a little bit too far from the house, so I want this thing to be up against the house as it's growing. I kind of like the way that looks, so let's now do something in front of those, but behind the tree. Got a couple of broadleaf evergreen plants towards the foundation of the house, so now with the next layer in, I'm going to add some textural variety and go with the deer grass. That's going to give us some vertical texture amidst the more broadleaf plants around it. And I'm just going to position that in some space behind the tree, but in front of those foundation plants. I like mirroring it on both sides of the tree. And so now if you remember the zones that I was talking about earlier, zone 2 needs to be your really spready things. I'm going to go with our widest plant that we've selected from our plant palette, the Bee's Bliss Sage. And I'm going to put a couple of those underneath the tree on the sidewalk side of it. So we're stepping down, we're going lower as we come towards the walkways. We have enough room to add a third one over here. I don't know if I like that because it kind of throws off the symmetry. We're also getting a little close to the edge of the property where I wanted to do something a little taller in that zone 3 again. So maybe not that plant. So maybe not a Bee's Bliss. Maybe instead we'll go for like this verbena here. And I might do a couple of verbenas close to the property line, maybe like in a trio. And if I did that, looking at the full facade of the front yard, I think I need to add some on the other side of the yard too, just to provide, pink on the left, pink on the right. With this project, we're going to try to achieve a more natural look. When trying to do that, I'm going to be using things in more repetition rather than have a bunch of one-offs. When the planting design has too much variety, it may end up looking too busy, and that may be something that you are going for, in which case you do want to have a lot of variety rather than a lot of repetition. Again, it's looking a little too perennial heavy over here. I think I need to add some more grasses. So in front of those, let's see what we have available. There's this one, which I know to be a kangaroo paw. Let's drag some kangaroo paws into this plan. Depending on your preference, you may want to space things really close together. You may want to have a little bit more space apart from each other. Using odd numbers is a good thing to do. Either ones, threes, and fives. That provides a more natural appearance than even numbers. I don't know the psychology behind it, I just know that that's the case. And again, because we're adding some things on the right side, we should balance by adding them to the left side as well as in the middle. I know kangaroo paws, they can be about 1.5 to 2 feet tall with their leaves. Their flowers maybe up to 3 feet tall. That's kind of pushing the boundaries of the zone 1, zone 2 that I was saying. As long as it's nothing that's going to be overbearing to you as you're walking along a sidewalk, I think that's good to place up against your sidewalk. In this case, I have it stanchioned back a little bit so that there's still room for a smaller thing to fill the space between them and the sidewalk. Our smallest things would be like this penstemon here, maybe this coyote mint. Kangaroo paws are a vertical texture, so I think I'm going to go with the penstemon just as something broadleaf again and lower to the ground. This could be in threes, maybe. Maybe you just have 2 flanking the kangaroo paws and you do something else in the middle here. I think I like having the 2 penstemons on either side and leaving this spot open for something yellow. I feel like we're missing some yellow in this spot. And so a low growing yellow option that I had on my plant palette would be like a yarrow or a sulfur buckwheat. There's probably enough space here that you can fit a couple of those. Maybe 3 if they're small enough plants. Maybe I push the penstemon back and crowd the plants a little bit more so that I can fit this yellow kind of at the back of the rock there in a larger quantity. It's looking a little bit like too much yellow, so again, I'm going to go back to my plant options here. Maybe a succulent. I haven't used a succulent yet. The option that I had for that was an agave, just a smaller agave. I think the agave that I selected is more like a 3-foot wide plant. So let's make sure that we're working with the actual size of this plant. Some other options that we haven't used yet are this blue fescue. I want to get that into the design somewhere. Maybe I'll take away the agave that I had at the corner and add a trio of these. Kind of liking that. So again, balance. We have the kangaroo paws on the right. We need to add them to the left. I got them on the far side of the driveway. I'm missing the yellow stuff we just added there on the other side of the driveway too, but let's get some kangaroo paws in the middle of the space, maybe like that, and then a couple, probably 3 on the right side as well. Next thing we added was this penstemon, so grab some of our yellow. Left some room for an agave. Let's see, on this side I had the blue fescues on the very far right, so maybe those should be on the very far left as well. Let's get rid of that yellow and add another trio of these. Sorry, Mr. Agave. And before I forget the far left side of the plan, let's add some of the stuff we've been working with to that side as well. Kind of breaking my rule and having them in trios together, but I don't mind the way it looks. I mean, I think that looks okay. White circles are just the size that the plant will be getting, hopefully, when it reaches maturity. It's just a tool that I have within the plant model themselves to help me spacing as I go along. Looking at it from this angle, I need more penstemons up here. Probably some more yellow. This is looking like a lot of yellow. Maybe it's too much yellow. I didn't use this pink one. But it does need some yellow. All right, and now we missed this spot over here. Is that just gonna be another deer grass? I think so. I like that. Yeah, I like this a lot. So now that I've got the white circles turned off, it's a little bit easier to see what this could look like. A lot of yellow. Maybe that's as simple as changing the yellow plants out for a similar sized thing of red or blue or green, or, you know, just another color. I like the balance of vertical textures as well as broad-leafed evergreen things in here. We've got our bigger fountain grasses in the back. We've got our smaller, they're not quite fountain grasses, but they're a vertical textured kangaroo paw. We've got those because they're smaller towards the front. We've got them balancing the left side and the right side of the composition. We've got our biggest, spreadiest things in the center of the yard where they can take up the most amount of real estate, including the left side of the driveway. We've got our pink balancing on the left and right. We've also got our penstemons and our kangaroo paws on the left side of the driveway as well as on the right side. So that's, I think that looks pretty good. Where I did miss was behind the tree. Now I know that the sun is moving from the right to the left, and that shade is going to be cast on this corner of the yard as the sun gets beyond midday. So back in this corner should probably be like a part shade plant, not a full sun plant like we have for the rest of the yard. Manzanitas, I know, can take both full sun and part shade. We have this blank wall space that I want to occupy. So I actually don't like the manzanitas there. And a plant that I really like for a morning sun / afternoon shade situation is a Carpenteria californica. That's a bush anemone is another word for it. I like that it's a little taller, so it's going to take up that wall space in the area that we have. It doesn't take up the full space. You see we still have enough room here to add some more things. So let's go with a more low growing manzanita in this location, in a trio of course. And then underneath the tree, if you don't mind it being a little crowded, I think I'm going to add a couple of California fuchsias just because they were a plant that we had on our plant palette that I want to try to find a space for in the design. And while that tree is just a little baby, that space may need something to fill it. I'm also thinking that on the left side of the house, that this area may be too narrow to try to fit more of these larger pink shrubs. It's pretty close to the walkway here, so you don't want to be walking next to something tall, but we are at the property line and we do want something to be taller there. It might end up just being California fuchsia the whole way because we are on the full sun side of the side yard. This is a plant that doesn't get too big, but it's also not too short. There's not a whole lot of real estate to work with over here. I kind of like the fuchsias, but it does look a little bit boring. Maybe I'm going to get rid of half of those two, and I'm going to fit a kangaroo paw in between them. And I think that provides a little bit more interest than how I had it before with just the 5 fuchsias. And there it is. There's our design. I think it looks pretty good. It looks a lot better than the grass that's there now. We've got a fair amount of textural changes. We've got a nice balance between the left side of the composition and the right side of the composition. We've got a good variety of colors. We've got yellows, purples, pinks. We've got a good variety of textures. We've got our vertical accents with our grasses and our kangaroo paws. We've got our broadleaf things with our sages and our manzanitas. Our tall tree anchoring the center of the composition, with our next tallest thing being this accent tree over in the corner, anchoring the corner. I like that the rock provides 2 different textures along the ground plane. It's not just one contiguous type of ground material. It's not just mulch through and through. I like that the rock has a wavy edge to it provides a little bit more natural look than a straight line. Thanks for watching and designing along with me today. I hope you had fun. I hope that you were able to learn something or be inspired by something. I hope that this helps you if you are designing your own space. If this does happen to be the same size and shape of your yard, feel free to do something very similar to this or exactly the same as this with your own yard. Thanks for watching and have fun with your own project.